Hey guys, my name's Austin Turner,
My name is Ernest Johnson.
and we're kind of here to kind of talk about racial justice or injustice or in relationships in America / Georgia
Because we know there's a Ahmad Aubrey thing going on, so we got to talk about it.
and we see a lot of you white liberals putting your 2 cents in, which
Oh, snap.
I kind of
snap.
went a little hard there. I kind of went a little hard there. I didn't know actually that.
He came in, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. That was a little harsh. I apologize if I offended anybody and you snowflake people.
My goodness.
So
my goodness. That's hilarious.
yeah,
Okay.
so and there's a few people I know that are kind of socialist communists, so I went there too. Anyways,
Hey, we're cool. Take things lightly. Don't get too upset about things, because more stuff will probably be said. So just chill out, relax, take a seat.
and I wanted to let y'all know, if y'all identify me on social media, I am ammosexual. That's how I want to be identified, because I love my weapons and my ammo, and also the right to carry in the United States. So
Yeah, that is a term. If you see his shirt,
It is a term.
Ammosexual.
it is a
A
term.
person obsessed with owning guns, a zealous supporter of the right to bear arms.
And that doesn't mean just white people. It means all people of color.
Oh, snap.
Unless you have a criminal history, then you don't need to carry a weapon.
Touche.
As in I don't know. Dang it. I don't know. Anyways.
How do we know each other, man? What's our history?
History. Yeah. Thanks for bringing me back on to that.
Good, man.
So I met Ernest through I had a mutual friend named Ryan Taylor, who knew a guy named Rashad. I don't know Rashad's last name.
Sherrod. Hey, Sherrod, I said your name right. That was him, man.
That is me. I always get your name wrong. I'm sorry. If you're watching this, you can blame me and call me an ignorant person. I don't care. Yeah, so I met him through Ryan, and then I guess he reached out to you about also coming to play for us one day, because we needed players in softball. Yeah, good old Cobb County / Smyrna softball.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah,
good times.
it's the major leagues of men's softball, I guess. So I met Ernest through playing sports, and first time I saw this guy play, I see him diving for a softball in the outfield and caught it, and
That's what we do.
yeah, and I was just like, oh, okay, all right,
We go all out. We go all out in softball.
definitely calling this guy back again for sure. So yeah, that's how we kind of met. And we kind of hit it off. So
Yeah, it's been about 3 years, I think, since the first season
Yeah.
that we played together.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it's been a semi-long friendship, I guess.
yeah, I'm really awful at connecting with people outside of certain events. Sports, I'm really awful at it. I'm pretty sure everybody is. So, anyways, So this whole Ahmad Aubrey thing,
Yeah.
crazy.
It is crazy, yeah. When you text me, like I think 2 days later after
Yeah,
it really
at
went like
least 2 to 4
circulating
days,
in the
yeah.
news, yeah. And I was on a date, and we're hanging out. we're in this conversation. It was a serious conversation too. I don't know what it was about, so maybe it wasn't that serious. I'm just saying serious, just to sound sophisticated.
I hope she's not watching this.
We'll see. And yeah, like you text me at like 11 o'clock. I was like, why is Austin texting me about softball? Because, that's how I know you're from. So I'm like, dude, it's quarantine time. Like, we not out here in these streets playing softball right now. We barely going to the grocery store. And so, yeah, I see it, and I just ignore it. I think, did I text you back or whatever? I don't even know.
After a couple hours, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I texted you back like, hey, man, what's going on? Oh, no. Yeah, I called you. So,
Yes, you called me. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I called you, and I don't think you picked up at first. Or no, I did text you, and I told you, hey, give me a call when you have a chance.
Okay, yeah. So we talked. Very quickly, I realized it's not about softball. It's about this Ahmad Aubrey case. And you come up with this idea of wanting to talk about it in some kind of like podcast format, which I've never done. You've never done either. And I was immediately like, hey, that's a great idea. I would love to talk about it, because this is something, not just this case, but just racism in America, in the Western world, isn't something that is talked about nearly enough, in a sense of having a discussion about it that is not just emotion driven,
Right.
and that is based in facts, and also is looking for some type of reconciliation and some like looking for how can we solve this, how can we fix this, instead of bashing each other in the head and calling each other names. That isn't happening because, of course,
or assuming as well, just because you're black, that you think differently than me, and vice versa. Just because I'm white, I think differently from you. There's people on both sides that think alike and also think differently. So
because we've been in churches where they talk about racial reconciliation. We've seen the media where they talk about it as well, not just about racism in general, but like how can we move forward and having just a healthy discussion when it comes to race and just politics in general. That healthy discussion isn't happening that much anymore. It's just a lot of bashing, a lot of my Facebook feed. I don't know if you've seen Facebook in the past 2 weeks, but it's been like a war zone.
It's election year.
Yeah. I've been unfriended by a few people. I must say, kind of, it does hurt a little bit. But a little bit. I say I'm cool, but yeah, it does.
Oh, you unfriended me? Okay, have a nice day.
Yeah, so that's why we're here now,
doing our thing,
talking about things. Yeah,
and we're not the only people that I've seen do this. There's another guy. He's a youth pastor in the Church of God down in LaGrange, I think, Georgia. He's a black guy named Romeo Billups. I think I'm pronouncing. I'm awful at pronouncing names, so his name's Romeo. I love the guy. He's such a great energy, spiritual guy. I look up to him. I don't get to talk to him as much, but I do follow him on social media, and he's doing this. I think he did this past week as well. He had a panel, him and two other people. I think it was I believe it's an Asian woman, maybe a Hispanic woman. I can't remember, but I know it was a white guy and then Romeo. They were talking about. I didn't get to watch it, but so we're not the only ones doing this, I guess.
That's awesome. Yeah,
which I think. And just doesn't need to be just when a situation happens.
That's not. No. Yeah.
I think this needs to be a constant thing, and I'm hoping from this we can get to that point to where maybe after this we can continue to talk about racial issues and talk about and also political stuff as well. This could lead to multiple different things. So
yeah. And before diving into it, let's go through briefly just our background. So that people can kind of know where we're coming from.
Kind of like where our areas, kind of like the general,
just our childhood.
So, I was raised by a single mom, and I have a younger sister, by 18 months. I say 2 years, but 18 months sounds more official. Is it more official? So mom didn't have a lot of money. She worked a couple jobs, and my mom also went to school full time for an MA degree, medical assistant.
Dang.
Yeah, she was hustling, and
boss.
Now we did have help. My grandparents helped us. My grandmother and my grandfather helped us quite a bit. But there were still days where we didn't have a lot of money so we probably had to go get a dollar menu item, or go to McDonald's and stuff like that. And my mom probably sit there and listen to this and be like, we did not do that all the time. I'm like, yes, Mom, we did.
Yeah.
But just, I grew up in majority black and Hispanic neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I was the minority in my neighborhood. I didn't notice anything different about it. I mean, I knew I was the only white kid, but I'm like, cool. This must be what I think everybody else went to. I was like, maybe this is how the area is. You have majority of one, blacks or Hispanics, and then there's some white people mixed in and stuff like that. And at least in the average, person area, you go to east side of Marietta or certain parts of Kennesaw and stuff like that, it's probably majority white, big, nice homes. That wasn't my life. I didn't grow up like that. So, so I was minority. So in a sense, I kind of know what it feels like to be a minority in a very small aspect. I don't try to compare that to other people of color in their experiences in America. So,
and it's interesting. Mine would be the opposite. You had a very sounds like a multicultural experience growing up. Mine was very singular in the sense of majority black. I would say about 92% black, 7% Hispanic, and 1% white. And that white that one white person each year was always like the bad kid who no one talked to, who was also weird. One, like there were 2 years the white kid was just the albino kid, and we just thought he was white, but he was actually albino. But then like there was like a few years where we did have a white kid, but my neighborhood like all black, not even Hispanic. And for the most part, we had 2 parents. Like everyone had 2 parents. It was rare in our neighborhood of majority black to have a single parent. Mm-hmm. Raising their kid. I grew up in College Park in Riverdale, and if you know the rap game, that's where T.I.'s from. Talks about all the time. 2 Chainz went to my high school. Monica grew up down the street. Waka Flocka, Chicken Dreads, he grew up down the street as well. There's a lot of that type of culture going on. Cam Newton went to a rival high school. He's a year older than I am, and like that's the kind of like climate I grew up in. I didn't interact with white people. My only interaction would be Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. So Lizzie McGuire, Even Stevens, every original Disney Channel movie. Boy Meets World. But Boy Meets World, Topanga. yeah, man. That was my experience. And playing baseball, every once in a while, I would see like an all-white team, and we would play them. They would beat us every time because they were more fundamental. So, we had skills, but they just did not commit errors. And so that was my experience until moving to Clemson for college. It was a whole different type of experience. And then I lived in Raleigh for 3 years after that. And now I've been back in Atlanta for 4.5 years.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't say, I grew up in Cobb County. So I was born and raised in Cobb County, and if anybody knows Cobb County, it's very diverse here. So yeah, I was, kind of mixed in with also, different races, experiencing different cultures. So, I was, I dived in now. I can't go into full details with some of my family, but I know a lot of my family has said how they view of certain cultures and stuff like that. Yeah. Not in my immediate, so like my sister and my mom, so like that, but some other families I've heard them say some things, and they might watch this / hear this. So I gotta kind of be careful. I'm not gonna call anybody out, but just things what I've heard.
I know your sister Brooke, man. She be looking at me weird, man. Like mean and evil. I be like, Brooke, what's going on? Like, why you look at me like that? She's a stare, So
yeah, I mean she's into the Hispanic men, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know why she's looking at you like that. She could be interested. I don't know. I'm just playing, Brooke. If you're listening and watching this, so.
Hey Brooke, that's all. Just,
hey, Brooke. More to it. So but growing up in our culture and stuff like that, like, or just the area we lived in family and stuff like that, like, what were you taught about racism, and how were you taught to, and how did you approach it, or how were you taught to approach it?
Because it wasn't diverse at all, pretty much where I grew up, and also like back then, politics wasn't really discussed that much, and the media didn't have a giant foothold on our everyday life because social media wasn't really around. So like when growing up during the Bush era, that was like my pretty much only idea of racism that was discussed, and politics as well. Because when Katrina happened, like the way Bush approached it, it was seen as highly racist, and that he doesn't care about black people. And I remember seeing Kanye West say on live TV, George Bush does not care about black people. And I was like, yeah, you go, Kanye West. And like for years, I was like, hey, if I ever see George Bush, man, in the street, I'm going to push him. I'm going to jump on him. I don't care what happens. I'm going to beat him up because I thought he was racist.
Secret Service.
Yeah. In middle school, you don't really think about Secret Service. You just think it's just gonna be George Bush and you, and so you got easy access, and so that's what I was thinking. But we didn't really talk about it as much. Anytime white people would be brought up, which was again very, very, very rare. My parents would just say stuff like "watch out" or be careful, or they would talk about their past, about how they used to not be able to do this and do that. My dad especially, he grew up in Selma, Alabama. My mom grew up in Atlanta, so my dad's experience, he experienced more, racism than she did, just coming from Selma, where a lot of stuff did happen. So he would tell me like a few things, but it was more so just living within my culture and seeing how they interact with things and how they view things. That's how I would also automatically and naturally view things when it comes to politics and racism.
That's good. Yeah, I would probably say I guess politics were talked about, not as much. I just remember them talking about how, like, because the big thing beginning of Bush to be, I think, before Katrina happened, and also 9/11 was the fact that gas prices are going up. And the media blamed Bush for gas prices, and that's all my family like. What are you talking about? Gas prices? That's not his fault. And I'm like,
man, it was so fun to attack Bush back then. Man, it was so fun.
Everybody attacked him. Yeah, no, you're good.
It was fun. It was
so that was like the only time we talked politics, when like they blamed Bush and stuff like that, and Hurricane Katrina. I don't really remember much about that. Like, I just watched videos and of what was happening down there, and that was pretty much my only time. Racism, like, my mom taught me was to treat everybody how you want to be treated. And so she said, so we didn't really talk about racism. We didn't really talk about that type of stuff. So it wasn't really anything that was a constant conversation and stuff like that. Even when I heard it, like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what really racism was growing up, because I hung out with a bunch of black folks. I'm like, what's racism? Other than I knew I couldn't say a certain word. That was the only thing. Like, I thought that was racist. I thought that was just racism in general. If you said that word, you are racist, and which you are either way. I don't like anybody saying, I don't care what color you are. I think that word is, it's a negative term on a past experience. So I didn't really experience racism. I was told, like, there's racism in America, but it's not as bad as it used to be. My grandmother and grandfather were in that time. My grandmother married an Italian guy, so I don't really know we don't really talk about kind of what he went through, if he ever did go through anything, but yeah, so it wasn't really much we talked about as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, well, especially our generation, seeing how we didn't talk about it as much to now we're bombarded with it on a daily basis.
It's crazy.
When it comes to all these different topics and subjects, like racism and politics is involved. And I believe that we didn't get enough time to adjust to this social media period. It's like, no social media, then Facebook, and then we're still like, oh, will this last? And then boom, it's like Twitter and everything else. And now the media's on Twitter and all these political voices are on Twitter, and everyone has a voice if you want as well. And you can possibly go viral as well. And it's like, we didn't really get a chance to adjust to how we should function as a society and as a people, and how our relationships should function in the midst of this heightened involvement of social media. Like, how should our churches adjust? How should our churches use it as well? It's like we're still like learning a lot of this. Yeah. And also trying to still use free thought as well, and the ability to discuss these topics freely. One of my favorite quotes is by a clinical psychologist. He says, in order to be able to think freely, you have to risk being offensive. And I think that's very good, because you have this playground of thought and all these different ideas. And for us to dive in and be able to play with it, that is going to risk us offending someone. And also, in return, we're going to be like people who are in that playground of thought, like they might offend us as well. But in order to evolve and grow as a people group and as a society, like, we need that playground of thought. Right. We need to be able to exercise that free thinking. Yeah. But how can we apply that to now with social media, where it's just bash, where you don't even get like a deep discussion, but it's just, you believe this, you believe that, bash immediately. Like, how it's like we didn't get a chance to adjust to this period. I think
everybody's just kind of like, if you're wrong, if you don't think like me, you're wrong. And I see that more on the left side than I do the right. It's very rare that I see that on the right side, but I do see it every once in a while. And I think the right can also be very, like, too much facts. Like, which is, I mean, there's a difference between opinion and truth. Like, your opinion may be true to you, but doesn't mean that it's true in general, in factual. So that's how I like approach anything when it comes to racism or in any topic. Doesn't matter what it is. I try to come at it from a truthful fact point of view. And especially on social media, we have a lot of keyboard warriors, and that's on both sides. It's not just, and just let everybody know, I'm like, if I'm kind of here to piss off both sides. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with upsetting both sides, because I think both sides need to learn, like, we can coexist together with different, like, what makes this world beautiful is that we are different. We have different opinions, different ways of looking at life. That's what makes this world go round. And that's what makes America so beautiful, is that we are different. And it's okay to be different. It's okay to think differently than me. And it's okay to, like, for you to, you listen to somebody out. You don't have to agree with them, but support their ideas. Yeah. Not in a sense of agreeance, or in a sense of supporting as in, like, I will help you get to your ideas to flourish them, but support them as a person, is like, at least they're thinking for themselves. Yeah. So,
and see, I would, on the right versus the left comment, I would kind of disagree. Well, I would disagree in one way and agree in another way. Mm-hmm. I would disagree in a way that, so as social media is increasing and the media is using it more and more, and we're all using it more and more, like all this debating and arguing is increasing. And now that Trump is president, it's still increasing. Right. If, let's say, Obama was still president for or there was another Obama that was president for 8 years instead of Trump, or if Hillary would have won, we would see, like, the opposite, in the sense of, like, people on the right thinking they're right and whatever. Like, we would still see that with whoever's president. I don't think that matters, because it's just getting worse and worse and worse now. And Trump is just a naturally polarizing figure, so that is a factor as well. But I would agree with you in the sense of people who are conservative. Like, if you look at the personality traits, people who are conservative are more so high in trait orderliness and conscientiousness, and that by nature, you're like, people on the right are going to be, like, less emotionally inclined, like emotional driven. They're going to think more in the sense of, like, of order and structure and tradition, whereas people on the left are high in trait creativity and trait openness and trait agreeableness. And so they're, like, all these ideas, these good ideas and bad ideas, they're more open to listen to it. But because they're high in trait creativity, like, they're more emotional driven. So that's not going to always be, like, laid in facts. Is like, there's another factor kind of driving them. And so I would agree with you in the sense of, like, people on the right are just more, like, calm and ease, like, Ahmad Aubrey, let's just wait for facts, let's see what happens, let's just look at the justice system. Whereas people on the left want to be more so, emotion, look at this, look at that, we need change, which we need both. We need the change, but also, no, there's some merit in tradition, there's some merit in the system. We need both sides.
Yeah, I think I've gone on the, like, and I know we got to move on to another question, but just to go off of what you said, I've tried to be non-emotion when I come to situations. I try to be not having emotion and stuff like that. And, my wife has, definitely has tried to encourage me. She's like, you can't just look at everything non-emotionally, because then it makes you seem like very robotic. And so, in a sense of where I try to bring non-emotional truth and facts, I try to put some emotion with it as well, like to be sympathetic towards the situation, which I am. Like, I try to find a good balance, and and I'm very not good at doing a good balance. I'm either this or this. So I've been trying to find a good balance in my life to figure out how to use truth and facts, but also put a little bit of emotion with it. So, and
we also have to be reasonable in that emotion, because it varies. Like, if some random woman in China dies of cancer, you and I, neither of us are going to pretty much care that much. It's a sad case, but
it is.
Yeah, but we don't care that much. If you die of cancer, I'm going to care more. If Sherrod dies of cancer, I'm going to care more about him dying of cancer than you, because that's my friend since 5th grade. If my mom dies of cancer, like, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchical effect, and we have to be reasonable in that. Because I remember when, like, a lot of the black shootings happened under Obama, what I saw was that a lot of the white people would be very calm and relaxed, during each shooting, and say, let's wait for the facts and evidence. And then I remember like
I did that.
Yeah, let's just wait for the facts and evidence. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then like a black athlete in college would be accused of rape, and then a lot of those same white people would be like, he should go to jail, kick him out. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what happened to wait for the facts and evidence? And so I'm just like, hey, we need consistency in how we make our accusations and how we react and how we express emotion. But then I have to be reasonable with that as well, because that's going to vary. There's a hierarchy of how much we care about certain things. Like some people just care about abortion way more than they care about women's rights. Like, so they're going to be more, they're going to have more emotion with that than they are with this. Some people care about racism way more than they care about gun rights. Like gun rights to me, that's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, like I care, but not as much as like, all these other issues over here. Right. So I'm not going to be I'm not going to have that much emotion when there's certain things that happen that's centered around gun rights.
Yeah, and I honestly, I would love to, have more of those those conversations, maybe in the future and stuff like that. We can talk about abortion and women's rights and how does that equal up to each other, or is it one and the same? And then gun rights as well, and we can talk about that as I can talk about any of that stuff all day. Like I said, I love talking about that, but kind of go on the next question real quick with has there been a time where one of us has been fearful for our life or has been discriminated against? Like, have you felt that? I probably need some time to think because like, I don't know, maybe I haven't, but so I don't know, like maybe has there been a time? I think we've talked a little bit about that, and I don't know if you want to talk about that concert you maybe went to or something.
Yeah. There's going to school at Clemson and living in Raleigh, like majority white areas. I assume I would have a lot more examples and occurrences of prejudice and discrimination and racism, but it's not really that many. There was one time in Raleigh I went to a concert, Zac Brown Band concert, with some friends of mine. And I left them to go and use the restroom, and I'm in like this long line for the bathroom, and I just see the eyes, like a good number of white people just staring at me, looking at me, and the way they were looking at me was not what I was used to. I spent 6 years at Clemson. I know how people look at you. This was different, man. This is different, and I was like, whoa, this is not feel good right here. So I could call my mom and say, hey, this is where I'm at. If something happens to me, I'm at this concert. And if I end up missing or dead, white folks did it. Do that right now, mama. White folks did it. Like ain't no mystery. Mama, I'm telling you, because there's
a lot of white folks at this place.
Yeah, a lot of white folks. Yeah. There was one other time in Clemson, again out of 6 years. On this like green grass, in the middle of downtown Clemson. It's like it's 10 of us. They're all white. I'm black. Celebrating a birthday, and this constant cars driving past, and all of a sudden we hear this faint like yell getting louder, and he's like something, you effing nigger, and he like by this time we all turn around. By the time he got to the N-word, and I could see him like looking at me, pointing, and it was a red truck, and I remember just being so in awe of like, wait, what's going on? I don't understand. And I was like, okay, let's get it. Like I was about to yell, chase him down, because he was kind of going to like medium traffic, but I had new shoes on, and so like I promise you, man, I was
listen, I don't want to mess up my new Jordans.
Hey man, look, the shoes like they were 3 days new, and I was like, I'm not running. But afterwards, like an hour later, like I had changed shoes. I went out.
Then I went running after him.
Yeah, then I went running after him. I didn't find that red truck. That was my only experiences. And
probably a lot of red trucks in that area. Probably a lot of Georgia fans, I guess, around Clemson area.
Oh, come on.
Hey, I ain't no Georgia fan, so. But I don't know if I've been discriminated against, to be very honest with you. I've been called a cracker. I actually hold that word.
I call you that like every day. So
whatever. No, you don't. I actually hold that word to just as well as maybe the N word. I mean, it wasn't used as a racial slur back in the day, and even to identify slaves and stuff like that. But I don't even like when white people call me a cracker. Like, don't don't call me that, because of the fact that that's a term to identify somebody as, I feel like as the N word. I feel like that is a very low, you are degrading me to a very low standard. And I don't mind joking about it, like, you know, and stuff like that. But when it's just like cussing, like, I don't mind cussing. I don't mind saying certain words. But if I do it in anger towards you, then it's hate. Yeah. Then it's coming from a place of that is hate and negativity. Now, if I'm just sitting there like just joking with you and we say a couple of cuss words, I'm not going to take offense to that, because of the fact that you're not doing that in a hateful way. You're doing it in a loving, joking type way, even though a lot of people probably think that cuss words in general is a negative way and makes you look not intelligent. And in some degrees, I agree with that. But yeah, I don't think I've been discriminated against. I've been fearful of my life. So I have a buddy, a couple friends of mine, James and Julia Sheely, and you know, they live in the Bluffs and
English Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah, English Avenue. Yep. And their mission and what they're doing down there is amazing. I completely support them, and if I have an opportunity and was driven towards to do something like that, I'll probably do the same thing. Would have moved down there as well. And it's not everybody in that area is bad. You know, that area is a bad area because it is the Bluffs, and it's not just because it's a black area. It's just the character of people down there, and a lot of people want to sell drugs, prostitute, and gang activity and stuff like that. But it's you know, Sarah, you know, my wife, she took me down one of the number one heroin corner in the Southeast. Yeah. And like when she told me that, I'm like, I have my pistol right here driving, because people like, and I've driven past there multiple times, people will yell at you. Like they'll stare at you like, who are you? Yeah. Like, do you want something? Like, do you need something? Like, and so like, that's out of any other area, it's just that little corner right there that I've every time I've driven past there, and for some reason I always take that same route. And I think it's like, I want to be fearful for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because I just like controversy. I like the, like, honestly, like sometimes I'm scared myself, but like, I don't know, like and it has gotten better. It's not, I don't think as bad as it used to be. But that's the area that just that corner alone makes me uncomfortable because of, you know, I've seen white people down there and stuff like that. It's just how everybody is, the way they're acting, the way they look at you. It's very like, I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. I guess that's the only time I've ever felt fearful. Like, and when the first time I drove in there, I didn't know that's what that place was. And when my wife told me, I was like, what the crap? Like, you took me, like, that's dangerous. Yeah. So it's probably not as much as your experience and stuff like that, but that was like the only, like the very first time, that was like the main time I think I felt fearful of my life was that point. And I can't really think of anything else. It might come back to me, but yeah, that was the only thing. We'll try to go to the next question. This is a good one. What has your experience as a black man or white man in the church? Like, what's the experience? Yeah. What's been your experience as a black man / white man? I'm white.
The church I grew up in was predominantly black. Mm-hmm. So that was my experience as a child, as a kid. And then in Clemson, it was predominantly white. Raleigh, predominantly white. Now in Atlanta, I go to a church in Smyrna, and it's predominantly white as well. Mm-hmm. But that question, I'm probably the wrong one to ask, because I'm very adaptable, very flexible, so it's easy for me to befriend anyone and talk to anyone. So I've had a pretty good experience, and the church I go to now, they talk about racial reconciliation quite often. So I would say overall, I've had a positive experience, and pretty much everyone I've interacted with in these churches would love for more minorities to be there. Right. The church I grew up in that was predominantly black, they would love for white people to come. But that could be intimidating to just be a white person and come into a church where you see just 400, 500 black people in suits, you know? Yeah. And same with like, you know, a predominantly white church, like that could be intimidating. Or just a different type of culture. Like the people I grew up with going to predominantly white church that has Hillsong or, you know, United Pursuit Band, the type of music is not going to draw them in, you know?
Yeah. And we can get more onto. There's a couple of questions I think I have that we prepared for the church wise, and we can get more into that. But I don't know. I grew up in my birth church. I call it my birth church. It's over here in Austell. It used to be called Milford Church of God, but now it's called Connection Point. It was pretty diverse. Like it was majority like it was a good mixture of white and black, and there were some Hispanics and Asians and stuff like that. But a lot of the black community that was in our church was mainly like from other countries. So we have a lot of, I think, Haitian, a couple, I don't know if Haitian's in Africa. Is that in Africa? I can't remember.
No, Haiti is next to Cuba.
Okay, so it's in South America. So we had people from
Caribbean.
Yeah, Caribbean. Sorry. So we had people from the Caribbean. We had people from, I think we had a few from South America, but we also had a lot of our congregation was from Africa. And then we had some, American black as well. But I grew up in a diverse church where they just talked about, how God looks at everybody equally. At least from what I remember, we talked about, there was injustice in the world and stuff like that. And, to call it out, to call all the racism and injustice out. But, pretty much, we didn't really talk much about it. So yeah, I don't know. That was kind of my experience growing up in that church, was pretty mixed. So, yeah.
Now, I would say like my brother and I went to a church in the West End area. I can't remember what it's called, but the pastor is African. So a lot of the people, like, if you go to a church, you would think this is a predominantly black church, but a lot of the congregants are African as well, because the pastor's African, so they kind of like drew to him. And my brother and I go thinking it's gonna be predominantly black, and we saw immediately like, oh no, this isn't our kind of black. Like this is like we can't really relate that well. Like you see our skin color and you think, oh yeah, cool, same thing. Like they can hang out, but it was just like a totally different. It was like a culture clash with us and them. So it was very interesting. Like I never had that type of experience.
Yeah, I've been to some. I've been to some Baptist churches that were majority or all white, and I just like, I don't mess with y'all at all. Like y'all are too white for me. Like, I need a little bit of like some hoppiness, I need some people feeling froggy in this place, So I couldn't even. There's some like I go to some white churches and stuff like that. Now I have been to an all black church, and it was very interesting. I think that was I didn't know what to do, because you had three people sitting in chairs on the stage and stuff like that. I don't remember what type of church it was, but what the denomination was, but like they were getting hyped, and I'm just like, so there's a too like you're too tight of a church where you're not popping. Yeah. But then there's like, to me, there's like also too much popping, and I'm like, I ain't about like, in my birth church, they were about flag twirling, people were dancing, but we also had the reserved people as well and stuff like that, so they kind of hit on all that. So I'll kind of skip over the next question because we kind of addressed that. But so we're kind of going into a different topic, and a lot more, probably a little bit more deeper, and this might go a little longer than what we were probably expecting, but what is your take or perspective on white privilege? And does white privilege even exist?
Yeah.
It's a tough question. Yeah, I feel like it is. Yeah.
It is. White privilege definitely does exist. The definition of what it entails and what it means varies from person to person. Like there's no objective definition of it. And if you have a particular agenda, you could definitely like say, like, you could skew that definition a particular way. But I think it definitely does exist. But it's hard because it's very complicated, because you can't measure it. It's tough to modify it. It's just this abstract subjective definition that it's hard to apply it from white person to white person, because like you said, like you grew up around majority of black people, like what type of privilege that you have compared to Donald Trump's son, or compared to the white people that grew up around Clemson. it varies a lot, and there's definitely privilege with other ethnicities as well.
Right.
Like we all have our privileges. As far as like if you could mathematically total them up, maybe Asians have 1,000 and black people only have 500, and then white people y'all's are 2,000 or 800. Who knows? But what I don't like with white privilege is that they only talk about the white privilege and not all the other privileges. And there's also majority privilege as well.
Right.
Because if we're in a majority black area, I'm gonna get privilege over you with pretty much anything that goes on in that area. If it's a predominantly white country that's been historically predominantly white for the past 300 years or so, then there's going to be that majority privilege as well. And so we should distinguish between the majority privilege and the white privilege, because if we go to Africa, that majority privilege trumps the white privilege. If we go to Japan, that majority privilege trumps the white privilege. That there's a lot of things that are factored in there.
Yeah, and I think towards the end of that, you're talking about other countries and stuff. I think from what I've heard and from other folks as well, I have a buddy, he lived in Japan, and he said, Japan, from what he told me, Japanese people are very, like, we are better than you.
Yeah,
they've been historically like that.
Yeah.
But he said when it came to Americans, they knew that you were better than them. Like the Americans were better than their own people. Like they were like
because of the war.
Because of the war.
Okay.
Because Japan never really got defeated very much. So when it came to like war and all that other stuff, or just them as a people, the United States surpassed them in their brain.
Yeah.
And so, he said when he got on a train or a bus or whatever, everybody was like, "Ooh, American, like, do you have a gun on you?
Yeah.
Do you not get out much? You can't travel with a weapon internationally." But when it comes to white privilege, I think some of the stuff you said, there's going to be a lot of people, I think, on the left that are going to probably disagree with you, and the right too. I think both sides can disagree with you. I think to an extent I disagree with you, which is, I don't look at it as white privilege, because growing up, I looked at there's privileged and unprivileged. Like, I think white privilege is a more newer concept when it comes to how we do this and do this and do this. Now, I do agree with you on areas. If we are in a majority black area, I do think, with you being a black man, you are going to get more majority of the privilege. Yeah. And people are going to like, hey, I'll help you out, because like, skin color. Yeah. And I've seen that on the other side as well, with white folks and stuff like that. But I've also seen it from, different aspects as well. Like, I've had black friends come with me to places and stuff like that where it's majority white, and they treat him better than they treated me. Like, not in a sense where they discarded me or disrespected me, but they definitely like served him hand and foot. Yeah. Which I'm great. Like, I'm okay. I can do the minimum. I'm okay with that. I don't need everything. I don't like my own wife waiting hand and foot, and she does a lot for me already. So I don't know. I look at white privilege as more of a privilege thing. Now, somebody did explain to me, I'm a big fan of Steven Crowder, not the worship singer, but the person on YouTube, and you can search him. He was telling a story about Ben Shapiro and hanging out with Ben Shapiro and his wife and somewhere up north and stuff like that. And Ben Shapiro's Jewish, and he sees a couple kids, their heads buzzed and stuff like that, and they were skateboarding. And Steven's like, you see him, oh my gosh, what? And Steven's like, calm down. He's wearing flip-flops and like, they're skateboarding and, all this other stuff. He's like, look at they're kids. Like, but he looked at it as a, like, maybe that's my privilege, like my white privilege, standpoint. But Ben Shapiro's white, but maybe that was just his not being a Jew. Like, he doesn't understand that. And when he explained it that way, he explained it a lot better than I can. But when he talked about that, and like I had to stop my audio, like I was listening to it, and I was like, listen, my wife's like, okay, I think I understand white privilege now. Like, it's not like, I don't think it should be used as to make, just because I'm white doesn't, like, don't say, oh, you have white privilege. I feel like nowadays, that's a tool to make somebody feel bad about who they are. That is used. Yeah, and so I tried to understand on what he was saying about that, and so I think to an extent, I think white privilege is just I just don't understand what you're going through because of the fact that, but I'm not going to feel bad for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I like that you just point out privilege in general, because you coming up in a single parent home and me growing up with both my parents, statistically speaking, that is a privilege that I have.
Right.
Like that's an objective fact based on data.
And that's not even white and black. That's just
that's not white and black. Now, when we're looking at the black community in general, we have a much higher proportion of single mothers and fatherless homes than all the other ethnicities. Yep. And so is that a Hispanic privilege, white privilege, Asian privilege, or is that just privilege in general that those other communities have over the black community because we have the fatherlessness? And I think like that would apply as just privilege. So it's tough to just like blanket statement, white privilege, when no, that's a very like serious factor. Like the ability to have both parents factors in to your probability of going into college, probability of getting married out of wedlock, becoming pregnant before marriage.
Success.
Success. Like one of the biggest keys to success is not having a child before you're married. Like not having a child before you're married. Yeah. And in the black community, like that is increasingly becoming one of our negative traits, is having children before we're married, and that is one of the detriments to success. Like that there's no privilege or whatever. Like that is no that we're doing that is going to harm our community. That is a privilege that if you and your wife, now that you're married, when y'all do have a kid, that's a privilege that your kid has. Yes. That my relatives do not have if they had a kid before marriage, like that, and that's not a white privilege. In essence, like that's the privilege that your kid now has because the choices you all made over this other person, over other people. Yeah, and that matters.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I get pissed off or just upset in general when people talk about white privilege, and I saw one chick on social media talk about, if you have to ask your black friend about their life and how they view racism or do they experience racism, then you have white privilege. And I don't agree with that because I don't think it's white privilege just to ask somebody differently from you what they go through. And personally to me, because mainly I grew up in an all black neighborhood. I grew up as I was the minority of my own community. As a white community, I was in a situation where I didn't have the privilege of a father in a nice home, nice area, stuff like that for my community. Yeah. So, I that's why I look at it because of the life I grew up in. And I don't feel like a lot of people look at white privilege as a career thing too. I don't have the $100,000 job or more a year just because I got it because I was white. I didn't graduate college. I've been trying to get in law enforcement for 8 years and haven't gotten into it. So I asked my question, when somebody talk about white privilege, I always ask myself, well, where's my white privilege at? If that's the case, and if you want to put it towards career wise, where's my white privilege? Yeah. But I've also been told white privilege has been explained as cosmetics, Band-Aids, normal stuff you will find in the store. I've had that explained to me. That's what it really is. Yeah. So I've heard different things.
Yeah. And regardless of the definition of white privilege, it's not going to be an absolute to where you and the 10 of the white people, each of you get 100% white privilege in every scenario. That's not going to happen. So even if you don't get this job or whatever, statistically speaking, the other 7 out of the 10 will, whereas the 2 out of the 10 black people or Hispanics probably won't. But then it's not just white privilege, it's also majority privilege. It's also privilege in general. There's a lot of factors that come into play. It's also if I'm the boss of a company, there's going to be it's going to be hard to be objective at times when it comes to hiring certain people. If just being frank, if it's a black person, I'm going to be okay, for my people, I gotta, so if they're both equally smart, both whatever, both able to come up with the work that needs to be done, I might be inclined to be like, nah, but I'm gonna hire the black person though, just to help my people, and so like that would be a sense of like black privilege there of like, nah, I'm black, he's black. There's no privilege or whatever else. Our majority privilege is just I'm black, he's black. Like let me help out this black person because of the historical oppression and whatnot. So like, and that's an example of like a black privilege that can happen with whites.
Yeah, and before we go to the next question, like I watched the video, and I'm pretty sure you've probably seen it, or maybe some of the people who are listening / watching this have probably seen the video where Don Lemon interviewed Morgan Freeman on racism, and he makes a clip. He's like, it's not real, and Don was like, what? Yeah, it is. He's like, tell me how. He's like, look where you and me are sitting right now. He's like, if there was still racism in America, and this is not word by word, people, so don't really hold me against this, but I'm kind of paraphrasing. But he pretty much in an assumption like, you and me are sitting here right now on live television, and everybody's watching us. Like, if there was racism in America still, we would not be sitting here on a major news network. Like, and it dumbfounded me when he said that. I'm like, huh, like. That's interesting to think. Like Morgan Freeman is saying that, and he's in the the elite of Hollywood, and so he's saying pretty much the opposite of what a lot of Hollywood is saying. Yeah. So that's why I was like,
yeah, and it's like racism will never be at 0%. Like it's always going to be
right.
Around. As long as there are people, there's going to be racism.
Right.
And even if it was only if we got rid of all the ethnicities instead of one, those people are going to find some way within their own people group to go against one another.
Oh, fat people, we don't like you.
Yeah, we don't, yeah. That will always be a thing. But it's like, but is it happening to the point of it's unlivable, or to the point of like where LeBron James tweeted that like basically what is as a black person, it feels like every day you're going outside. Getting attacked or
being hunted.
Being hunted. Yeah, like is that true, LeBron James? Is that true, Ernest Johnson?
Especially for you.
Well, yeah, especially for him. But like, do we really feel that way? And if not, is it like that means it is a lie, right. And that is a very dangerous lie because it's very polarizing and it doesn't ease anything at all.
No,
it does not.
It makes emotions probably more about the situation. They escalate it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you on that. Like, and I think Morgan Freeman talked about like I think he even said like stop talking about it, like, or maybe it was Denzel. I can't remember, one of those two guys. Like they said, how you get rid of racism? Stop talking about it. Stop putting light to it. That's how you kill something. You don't add to kill a fire. You don't add more fuel to it. You don't add gasoline or whatever you put to it to make it more. Yeah. You let it die off and don't give it attention. Yeah. So
and I think one way to let it die off would be like some sense of reconciliation, because we never had that as a country. To just shut it off and go cold turkey is kind of hard to do, because that just leaves all this this animosity boiled up from generation to generation. But we never really had that reconciliation piece in our country so that we can move on and begin to let it go. And the church has to be a big part of that piece. Unfortunately, in the 60s and 70s and up until today, the church has kind of been lessened in its presence in Hollywood, its presence in politics, its presence in our everyday life, its presence in our education system. We've pushed Christianity to the side and covered it more and more and more. So that reconciliation piece that needs to be Christ-led, it's not able to really work in our country anymore, because we've just covered it up and tried to put band-aids on it. And now we get this explosion of social media, and now we can have all these viral videos and see what's going on. It's just driving everyone crazy.
Yeah, no, that's good. And, I think we've hit on quite a bit of things. But so from my perspective, and I don't know from your perspective as well, but I've noticed that more white people and people in higher stature are the ones talking about white privilege. Would you agree with the observation? And if so, why do you think that is? Yeah, it's pretty loaded question.
No, but it's fine. It's fine. I think the black community in general isn't. Well, for one, let's say the white privilege idea is how it's kind of like engulfed within politics.
Right.
And a lot of the black community isn't that involved with politics to begin with.
Right.
We're just living our life, and there are some involved, but as a good majority, like there's not that much involvement that we have within the political arena. So therefore, white privilege isn't really a thing with us because we're primarily around black people. And so our experiences with white people is very limited. Now, things like racism or systematic oppression, like that could be that's a word, but white privilege isn't really a thing that we tend to talk about as much. Unfortunately, I do see a lot of it as virtue signaling when it is brought up by a lot of white people in the media. I would be more okay with it, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if they would talk about all these other types of privileges as well, because it's very complex. The idea of white privilege, again, is very complex. And we have to, for something to be so complex and for us to just say, for people to just say, oh, white privilege, that's very dangerous and not the wisest way to approach it. And so because of that fact, it's tough for me to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because they're not approaching it in a wise way. Because when I go outside, I'm not, like with LeBron, I'm not thinking about getting hunted down. I'm thinking about other issues. I'm thinking about my two nephews and their education system, how their school is going, because that affects them a lot harsher and sharply than possibly getting hunted down. The education system is very horrible in a lot of places, and that's crushing a lot of black people, white people,
everybody.
Everybody needs to be addressed, and that is a direct hit right there. The possibility of being attacked by a white person is very, very, very low compared to that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I'm in agreement with the sense of, and I've been stated as well on social media and stuff like that, without the black community being successful, we don't have an America, because for our economy and stuff like that, we need the black community to be successful. We need them to also work and stuff like that. So
and there's a guy named Thomas Sowell. You should look him. Have you heard of Thomas Sowell? Okay, he's a black economist. Okay, very, very, very smart guy. He's about 70, 80 now, and he talks about how the black community was flourishing in the 40s and 50s.
You're right.
Flourishing.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, when the government brought in the welfare state and welfare programs, that's when single motherhood increased.
Amen. Yep.
That's when crime increased.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest reasons why, not the systematic racism, that right there is one of the biggest pieces why the black community started to go on the decline with crime and single motherhood. That's what killed a lot of the black men and started increasing the prison rate.
Yep.
But him looking at data, showing the data and speaking it, he doesn't get portrayed as much in the media. This well-established black man who's way smarter than Al Sharpton can ever be, we hide him. We cover him up. But Al Sharpton gets put on a pedestal. When Ben Carson, I'm sorry, huh?
And an agenda.
Yeah, as an agenda. When Ben Carson ran for president, I'm thinking, oh, here's a good social experiment. I want to see if the black community is going to get behind him. I want to see if CNN is going to say, hey, Trump sucks and Cruz sucks and Jeb Bush sucks, but look at Ben Carson. He's cool. But no, they dog Ben Carson. It was never even had a chance. It's smart. A neuroscientist. How many neuroscientists do you know, Austin?
I don't know none.
We don't know. I don't know. We don't know none. Ben Carson was not. It could have at least been, hey, he's Republican. We're against that. But look at this black man, this well-educated black man running for president. This is awesome. We had Obama, and now we got another one. We may not vote for him, but look at this. That did not happen. Condoleezza Rice, that did not happen.
Yep.
Colin Powell, that did not happen. It's highly political, and that frustrates me because if we're looking at black people and what you want to be, we have all these rappers, we have all these football players, all these athletes that we can be. The more options we have and we see, we're going to be inclined to go that route. But when it comes to politics, we don't have that many options. We have Obama, that's one. It's okay, cool, but one, That's rare. But now look at we got Obama and Ben Carson and Condoleezza Rice. Like the more numbers we see, the more I'm going to see, oh, that is possible because it's not rare. It's not just one person. You have all this representation in Congress. You're like, oh yeah, it's possible. Whereas me, it's so little. I'm naturally, whether I'm a kid or whatever, I'm naturally going to assume the odds are fewer and far between. But if we have all these options like Ben Carson and all these others, that's going to increase the opportunity. But that's not the case. And that's very hypocritical and detrimental because Thomas Sowell, look him up, extremely smart man. Extremely smart. And we don't even cover him. We hide him.
Yeah, I